One Piece has gone completely off the rails. In just under 10 minutes, we are going to know the truth of the world, whilst 3 Vegapunks enjoy a lovely coffee. However, in order to get there, we need to defend against 5 old men, and all we have sitting in the kitchen is 1 young monkey ready to cook. This is a very exciting week for many reasons. First and foremost, because we have a new cover story. It feels like it's been so long since Germa 66's emotionless excursion ended, and as much as I love Oda going wild with the art request covers, what I love seeing significantly more are the adventures of our old characters. Although this first page gives very little away. We see Onigashima having sunk down to the ruins of Old Wano, so I imagine that Momonosuke must have lifted it and then just dumped it underwater because it did touch down on mainland Wano. They would have needed to shift it. And I'm curious to find out who will be following for this cover story because there are a couple of options. I think the most obvious candidate would be a Diaz Drake-led cover story, one where we follow him attempting to make his way back to, well, I was going to say back to the Marines, but I'm not sure if he can actually do that. As a member of SWORD, he's publicly declared himself as a filthy pirate, but maybe there's a sword gathering point somewhere. If Basil Hawkins is alive, then he'd also be a fun choice. It would be really cool to see how his personality has changed after the raid, or actually not changed, because remember, he did correctly predict that he was going to be defeated. So I guess everything went according to plan for him. It's a bold maneuver and it didn't pay off, but well done, I guess. But what I'm hoping for most is a cover story following the remaining Tobiropo members, because as far as we know, they were all left on Onigashima, and we didn't get a check-in with them like we did with King and Queen. To put my bias out there, I mostly want this because I want more Ulti. I absolutely love her, and I think that following her mundane yet angry adventures would be a lot of fun. But to start this chapter off properly, we have the message that is going to rock the world. Eventually. Not now, of course. And as much as I didn't expect to hear the bombshell news this week because, well, that's just what Oda does. He leaves us on a cliffhanger, and then instead of pulling us up, what he does is drop us down to a second cliff, in this case being the 5 elders at the end. And then eventually Oda works his way around to each cliff in his own time, sometimes over months or even years down the line. I'm definitely not disappointed though, because I kind of love what's happening here because it's bizarrely relatable in this day and age. This is Vegapunk's pre-stream. He's gone live, but like most streamers, he has to wait and give viewers an opportunity to hop in before starting properly. Except he's left the mic on and we can hear all of the backstage stuff, which is fascinating in its own right. Feels a bit like watching Star Trek, where we need to accomplish something big and nearly impossible, like broadcasting a message to the entire planet. And then what we get is a discussion consisting of a series of fictional technological justifications for how it is we do the thing. Now, something a little heartbreaking that I didn't notice at first are the 3 Vegapunks that were selected for this outgoing message. We've got Stella, Shaka, and Pythagoras, who just so happen to be the 3 Vegapunks that we've seen die on Egghead Island. And you have to wonder if that was purposeful. I mean, obviously it was purposeful from Oda. You've got the 3 dead Vegapunks doing the video will, narratively, good stuff. But I wonder if there was any in-world logic for Stella to select just these 2. Given that Shaka was able to predict his/their/someone's death, I wonder if he was able to very specifically predict which Vegapunks would die, and then suggest that the 3 of them make this video will together just in case. And what we have here is a flip. The post-time skip typical One Piece arc formula tends to involve a catastrophic problem that we need to solve. Noah destroying Fishman Island, Caesar's chemical weapon, or Doflamingo's birdcage. And those situations are very often given a time limit. Like say back on Wano when we had 5 minutes until Onigashima hit the capital. A nice countdown to destruction to amp up all of the assorted dramas. But on Egghead, what we have is a countdown to victory. We have to stall the Buster Call, as well as the 5 Elder Stars and a Marine Admiral for 10 minutes. If we're able to do that, then the message, it gets out, world hears all of the truths, and we win. We had a very similar flip occur during Dressrosa as well, when Gats and the citizens had to protect Luffy for 10 minutes whilst his Hakis recovered. In that case, they stalled for 10 minutes and ensured victory. Originally Stella, he wanted to wait an hour, patient man. But Shaka very wisely bartered him down to 10 minutes. Even then, 10 minutes is a lot given what we're faced with. Although my favorite part of this whole endeavor is the Vegapunks trying to decide what they're going to do with that 10 minutes, and Pythagoras suggests that they use the spare time to invent something, or Shaka just wants to make some coffee. It's just so mundane in such a dramatically potent moment. The contrast is hilarious, and it's not a sense of humor that a lot of authors can get away with. In this situation, I feel like most writers wouldn't want to risk compromising the very serious tone, but Oda never forgets what kind of world this is, and character quirks will always shine through. Like some sort of relentless sun god who refuses to yield to all of the dark clouds looming overhead. And I actually kind of hope that Pythagoras does end up inventing something in the 9 minutes or so he's got, something that we've already seen or might end up being weirdly important. But chapter 1109 is what I like to call a round the world chapter. Oda does these every now and then. In fact, he does them much more frequently now because One Piece is really gunning towards that ending. And the location selection might seem a bit random, but Oda is doing a very classic around the world abridged tour, selecting a major location from each of the 4 blues, 2 from Paradise and 1 from New World. I think the only thing that Oda could have done to get a proper worldwide vibe is to show an island in the Calm Belt as well. Although of the ones we know of, Amazon Lily is really cut off from the technology of the world, and another is Rusukaina, the island with all of Luffy's giant animal friends. They're probably not particularly well equipped either. But the key theme between all of these nations is that they are world government affiliated countries, hence why they have the inbuilt technology. We don't see places like Fishman Island or Wano because they haven't been kitted out with Vegapunk's inventions. With Dressrosa, we see some wonderful familiar faces including Rebecca and Kiros, and it looks like they're in the very first Dressrosa location where we saw Doflamingo, which is the outdoor palace area with the pool that Doflamingo had his horde of ladies swimming in. We also see Leo here, so that's confirmation that the Straw Hat Grand Fleet still has not mobilized. And fair enough, but mate, I am so curious about what they're going to do in the future, because the way the narrator made it sound was that the Grand Fleet were going to do something so historic, a great incident, even better than that of what we're seeing right now. I should also say that I love the little touch that the Tontada tribe still refer to Luffy as Luffyland, and Rebecca still calls him Lucy, which was Luffy's very clever alias to register for the Corridor Coliseum without anyone realizing that it was him, and people realized that it was him immediately. Danton, Zhao, Bartolomeo, they were all over him. We also take a short trip to Water 7, which I should say isn't a world government nation, and I don't think it can be because they don't have a king, but they are a world government trading partner. And this is a monumentous occasion for weirdos like me who do nothing but talk and think and dream about One Piece 7 days a week. Because I imagine that most people have no idea who this little girl is, but we've been following her story for a long time, like 16 years long time. We've been following this story for longer in the real world than she is old in the One Piece world. Her name is Alice, and she was introduced on the cover of chapter 487, which was published in 2008. She was candidate number 153 for Iceberg's secretary job after Califa needed to resign due to being a traitorous witch, and there's even a very cool moment in the anime where we see a newspaper reporting on Iceberg's secretary auditions like it's a reality TV show. And let me tell you, this is an example of one of those cliffhangers that Oda just left us dangling off for years. We didn't find out who won the secretary auditions until 4 years later, when it was revealed that Iceberg had hired this genius 10-year-old, who I will say a lot of people did and do still suspect is a child Cypherpole agent, and one of them may even be Iceberg himself, who looks very suspicious of Alice in this image because she's pretty much a mini Califa. Although given how helpful she was in this chapter, I'd say that's looking more unlikely. You'd think that she would want to work to suppress the truth, not spread it. But I should say that it is only on this day, almost 16 years later, that we finally learned her name. This chapter is the first time it's been mentioned that she's called Alice, and this is unironically the sort of stuff I love so much about One Piece. Following all of these, I don't even know if you could call them tertiary characters. There's a lot of the times they're more like set dressing that you only see a handful of times, but it goes to show that no one is neglected in this world. Every piece, no matter how small, is always moving while we follow the Straw Hats, and just as everyone finds out about our crew's adventures periodically in the odd news article here and there, we as an audience learn more about these minor characters through a mere handful of panels that play out over the course of years. So genuinely, that name was a bigger reveal to me than seeing all of the 5 elders appearing at the end. That's just the kind of man on the internet I am. Moving to East Blue though, and where else could we have possibly gone? There is no more important character in all of the East Blue than Whoopslap. And we've got everyone hanging out right in front of Party's bar, which is the location that started it all. This right here is the bar where Luffy ate his devil fruit and pushed over the first domino in a massive run that has resulted in the Egghead Island incident happening right now. Although sadly, everyone in Fuchsia Village won't actually get to see this message, only hear it, because old Mayor Whoopslap doesn't want to pay for raising a visual dendemushi, which is actually some very interesting snail lore that got dropped there. In the One Piece world, they communicate via organic beings, and whilst we don't know exactly how they're cultivated, apparently you do need to water them regularly, as shown by Dragon on the cover of chapter 587. But the way Whoopslap speaks about them makes me think it's more like buying a dog from a breeder. There's a pretty significant upfront cost, and then there's ongoing maintenance because it's a living creature, needs to eat and get groomed and possibly defecate. Do the telephones defecate? But visual dendemushis, they're like very high-end designer dogs. They are not cheap and probably far more than a small village can afford. Moving to South Blue, this island could be Batoria, the island where Ace was born, and I guess consequently the island where Rouge died, because it has this distinct feeling of general unremarkableness. Just a lovely area with palm trees littered about. A real good getaway spot when the world government aren't conducting indiscriminate baby slaughter. With North Blue, it gets very difficult to say exactly where we are due to how little we know about it, but there are a series of snowy islands that were featured in Lore's flashback. The trio of Minion Island, Swallow Island, and Rubeck Island. Minion Island was where Doflamingo killed Rocinante. Swallow Island was where Lore fled and formed the Heart Pirates. That's where Beppo, Penguin, and Chachi are from. And then there's Rubeck Island, which was where Diaz Barrels was planning on meeting the Marines to sell the Ope Ope no Mi. In the sky, we see some big news with a very small detail, because between Vivi and Warpole, you can see the reporter who is obsessed with Vivi, the one who lent her some clothes and claimed that she would never wash them again. I think that Oda's going through a very sapphic phase at the moment, considering last week's color spread with Tashigi and Reiju. It's a very interesting motif that he's got going. And of course, we visit Momoira Island, where what we see is Dragon, no doubt looking east again. That's just what he does. I really don't understand the people who still believe that Dragon is going to play a big role in this arc. He's made his position very clear from the beginning, and that position is mostly stationary and pointing in an easterly direction. And Dragon does have a flashback to his snail call with Shaka, but I strongly believe that Oda is showing Dragon far too often and he's always doing nothing, which results in his presence being devalued because it provides no value. I recently did a video where I went through all of Dragon's appearances in One Piece, and I calculated that 79.3% of the time when Dragon appears in the series, he's not doing anything. And when I say not anything, I mean nothing. He's sitting or standing or looking east, and very little of substance is going on. And with this newest appearance, that rate has probably increased to over 80%. Back to Egghead Island though, and this might be one of my favorite Gear 5th attacks to date, where Luffy, he grabs Satin and Kizaru and he smushes them together and then spins them around like pizza dough, which I don't think is coincidental. Pizza just so happens to be Jewelry Bonnie's favorite food, so I think that Oda is giving a nice nod to Bonnie and having Luffy use something that she loves as a source of hope. Here's a sentence I never thought I would say. Saint Satin had some pretty impressive control in his pizza form, because Kizaru, mate, that dude was flung into a battleship like a pleb, but Satin, he had the agency to like frisbee himself back onto the battlefield. And I'm gonna say it again, I have to wonder if Kizaru was actually overwhelmed or if he's kind of throwing the towel in and allowed himself to be taken out of play, because we have Kizaru on the floor again in pretty much the exact same position as when he got knocked out by Luffy the first time. He's got his arm up covering his eyes and he's making the panty noises, but the dude just looks over it as if he's carried out the mission he was given. He killed Vegapunk, he did that, good boy. That's me patting him. And now he's retired back to the ship to lament the loss of his maybe friend might be a very strong word to use, his acquaintance, and that arm, that might be covering some tears. But with his mission complete, he's going to leave everything else to Satin, not really wanting to get involved any further, or just not being able to get involved because he sucks. Not a problem though, because Satin has friends, and at the end of the chapter, something I definitely never expected to happen happened when Satin decided that this situation was dire enough to summon the rest of the 5 Elder Stars. This is the sort of thing that I didn't expect to see until the final chapters of the final arc of One Piece. Every Elder Star in the same place with their demon forms. This is final war sort of stuff that we're looking at, or at least that's how it feels to me. It sets up some pretty scary implications, which is that wherever one Elder Star is, you have the potential for all of them to be there, and I imagine that summoning Imu isn't entirely out of the question either, since he seems to share their demonic abilities. And surely this is the overwhelming force that will get us to retreat from Egghead. Because right now, we're just slapping around that busticle. Kizaru is down again, and the Vice Admirals are not that great. Although, you could also look at it this way. Is Saint Satin summoning 4 more mighty allies to bring down Luffy? Or is Saint Satin just ordering Luffy 4 more pizzas? Even I think that it would be pretty absurd for Luffy to be able to take on all 5 of them at once, although I'm definitely down to see him try, because there's a wealth of cartoon tropes that we haven't seen Luffy pull yet. Like when a cartoon protagonist is in danger, there's the classic go and hide behind a weirdly shaped object, or even the much more better disguise yourself, like Bugs Bunny and Drag. Or maybe even similar to how Foxy disguised himself during the Davy backfight. So I don't think that Luffy can beat them, but we do need to find a way to hold them off for 10 minutes. Otherwise, they'll cut the transmission and Vegapunk's truth will not spread. There's every chance that we'll never see the end of that message anyway though. It could be another one of those Lore Blue Balls moments where he's a about to say the really important part, but that's when the elders cut it, like shooting Professor Clover before he revealed the name of the ancient kingdom. And this is also putting Dory and Broggy into some potentially life-ending danger as well. They're heading to Luffy as we speak, and prior to this last page, I had no problem with that. All we had to deal with then was a spider and a light bulb. Having Dory and Broggy there would have been overkill. But now I really don't like the idea of them rushing in to confront the 5 elders all at once, and I would very much fear for their lives. Although it would be very helpful for our 2024 Bing card, because we have 3 named character deaths on there, and Vegapunk has only ticked off 1 of them. But if you'd like to be the first to find out how we're going to deal with a horde of 5 elderly gents, then please do subscribe to this channel for consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into your YouTube feed.